But let's look at some specific challenges with hybrid remote work. And the first one I'm going to bring up, we alluded to this in the intro, is space can be a challenge because you want to be in the Goldilocks zone, right? You don't want to have too little or too much. You want to have just the right amount of space because you don't want to be paying for space that you don't need, but you also don't want people fighting over space constantly. I was flashed to like my seventh grade year going to the cafeteria. We were seventh through 12th grade school, and I had to eat lunch on the windowsill because there weren't enough seats to sit in. Yeah, don't
Yeah.
want that. You don't want people working sitting on the floor with their laptop.
I feel like I need to know, did you have the lunch box or did you go through the line and have your meal from there?
I was a lunch buying person, so I do seem to remember like having my tray on my lap and just sitting on the windowsill. And part of it was probably like seventh grade, didn't want to sit with younger men when I'm still a little boy.
Seventh grade's tough, and you were in there with the big boys too, huh?
Yeah, it was definitely scary.
There's a big enough difference just between seventh and eighth grade. Okay, yeah, we don't want that in our work environments. And that's definitely been part of the challenge with the full return to office. If you think of the hybrid remote, where if you are doing, as we've been talking about, certain days you're going to be in the office, like how are you going to manage that? So you don't have fully in person, but you still have people that are going to be sharing spaces. What's the process for that going to look like? And there are different options for that. I have never had to share a space in an office like what we're going to be describing. So I don't know how I would respond, Ken. Have you ever had to do any of the hot desking or the hoteling?
Yeah, actually, I did. I was in an office where it was just wide open. You didn't really have a specific spot. Now, part of that was my choice because I was like, "Well, I'm not here enough. I don't need a specific spot." I think they had limited, like, most people were going to be like in an open cubicle type of a environment, and they had a very small amount of office, like actual offices with doors. At the time, I was managing a small team, so I would have qualified for an office. And I felt, you know what, give the office to somebody that's going to be here more often because I don't plan on being at the office much. I'm either going to be out at customer sites or working on stuff. And then when I am here, I can just sit wherever. I don't really care. I'd usually just find a conference room that was open and camp out in there. But in these bigger offices where you got lots of people that don't have assigned places coming and going, you got to have a plan. You got to be intentional. How are you going to manage this?
I thought it was interesting the stats that we've seen that in North America, only 40% of companies still have one-to-one desk to employee setup. And that was down from 56% in 2023. And 60% of the US and Canadian employers are now use desk sharing or hoteling. Many offices are still only 40 to 60% full on the average day, which I think that would be good. The other aspect of this is when I was in office, we had the little cubby farm. So it was a bit of noise, but you still had your little space that you could go to. But a lot of the completely open environment of how do you do focused work there? And how do you maintain your productivity in that type of environment? That would be pretty challenging for me because I'm very sensitive to noise.
And with these mandates coming out, like return to office, I don't know if these executives are thinking it through. Are there enough parking spaces if everybody comes back at the same time? That was another stat we had here is a shortage of desks is one of the top three reasons for avoiding the office for 1 in 5 workers. Not enough desks on busy days. When too many people show up at once, the scramble for space can lead to frustration. It's just, I can imagine just everybody like being on edge. And it's one of those things where you accidentally bump into somebody and you're like, sorry. And they like flip out and you're like, whoa, whoa. I would assume a lot of that, like where it's, I can't, one more thing happens to me, I'm blowing up on that person. It does not sound like a very fun environment to be in.
The stat that caught my eye was that 39% of employees that are in the strict hot desk environments find the setup enjoyable. So 39%. Hmm.
Close to half, but
Closer to a third. And I could see the concerns about not having space, the hygiene, and even the logistics of, let's say you're in your office day and there's no set place, but then the whole purpose of being there is to be with your team. So then you have additional logistics on top of that. So managing the people and getting them into that environment, because one of the things that we do know is the least effective of the synchronous is when you've got some people that are together in the group and then you're trying to bring in the people who are not in. And so that's the challenge. That's why one of the best practices is if your team's going to be an all in or all remote type thing. So if you've got this kind of split thing, that can also be a challenge for figuring out. It's all the logistics of getting your space, getting your people together.
I could see that being very frustrating. As these mandates are coming out, I would probably be telling myself it's just temporary. They're going to figure this, it's going to get better and hope that it would. Because, yeah, not knowing where you're going to sit. I would be the one, because I'm a planner, I'd be like, I'm going to get there at 6 so I can get this exact spot that I really like to sit in every time I'm at the office. I'd be that person. I'm not going to be the late person walking in late. There aren't any more spaces left. Where am I supposed to sit today?
Too much of a flashback to seventh grade lunch.
Yeah, maybe. I don't mind getting up early if I can avoid things. I know we don't need to be here till 9, but I'm going to get there at 7 just so I can take my time, don't have to worry about the parking space, come up to the office, don't have to wait on the elevator, can go right to the space I want to sit in. The other thing I was thinking about on these spaces where it's a free for all, the difference between hot desking and hoteling is, at least from what I saw online, because I'd never really heard the hoteling term, but the hoteling indicates it's more organized. You have to actually book the space that you're going to sit in. It's not just you just walk up and find a space and sit down, where hot desking can be more just loosey goosey. But I had a situation where when I worked at the school district, I managed a bunch of distance learning labs that we had. At each one of the secondary schools, there was this lab, and every school kind of did it differently, but most of them you had to basically reserve the room. It was like an open room, it wasn't anybody's specific room. What would happen in those situations, because nobody really owned the room, is some people wouldn't take care of it, right? Some people didn't care. Or some people were using it, they weren't necessarily using it as the distance learning lab. They're like, oh, nobody's in this room. Let's put these kids in here and they'll probably be fine. Somebody comes to actually use the room and it's like, why aren't any of these microphones working? Oh, somebody unplugged them all. Or there's microphones missing, or this screen's busted, or why is this desk all sticky? A lot of that would happen because there was no ownership. It wasn't taken care of. Even if you tried to say maybe there was a reservation process, and then you'd be like, okay, Mark, you were the last person to use this room. It was like that when I got here, or I didn't leave it. It wasn't like that when I left. Somebody else must have came in here and not signed it out. So that was always, you never knew what they tell me the truth. Did somebody else come in here? There was always an issue, some better than others.
Yeah, definitely with the that challenge of the hybrid and the locations, people not taking care of it, the being a challenge to actually get a spot. Any other challenges with the space of not taking care of it?
We talked about the hygiene, just the stress of wondering where you're going to be.
That related to space. Another challenge of the hybrid would be the meetings. Definitely, if you have some people that are hybrid, some people that are together. So that does fall, I think, within the hybrid environment as well. And I've not found a good way to do that. That is just the most difficult synchronous type where you've got a group and then you've got your little singles coming in. That's definitely a challenge. I would say there's That might even be a bit of a challenge around the synchronous and asynchronous and kind of determining which one to use when and how to do it effectively. I think that because that was a challenge in our fully remote, I think that would continue to be a challenge in the hybrid environment as well. Anything else that you would add?
Like in what way?
As we were talking about, if you are coming into the office and you're just doing your regular old meetings and you haven't really thought about any meeting protocol, you haven't updated that type. I think that could be a challenge to where it could create resentment. You're like, I just commuted 2 hours to get here to be in the office, and this could have been an email to where,
Oh, yeah,
that's
I
what
got
I'm
you.
thinking in terms of basically goes back to choosing the most effective way to communicate. Or do we need to be all together? Can we do it asynchronously?
That really resonated with me when you mentioned that earlier, where I think there would be a lot of thoughts of, oh, we'll just meet on Wednesday when we're all in the office. We could just meet even though we're remotely. And it might be even better, right? If we're all at our computers meeting. That was like the challenge of the hybrid that you brought up. It's if six of us are in the office and two people are remote, it can be done, but you have to be very intentional about including those remote people. Sometimes it's better to be like, hey, let's just do this meeting when we're all doing our remote day on Friday, when we can all just connect via our computer.
With it, when I'm talking about like the meeting protocols, be intentional. What do you need to do before the meeting? And you, as the person that has called the meeting, have you gotten out the information in time for people to review it? Whatever that needs to be done before, that's pre-work, so that we're not bringing people together and we're reading something to them. Think about who needs to be there. Is it truly everyone? And I saw this framework and it included the different types of meetings. And the one that people rated the most effective were the ones where decisions were made. The one they liked the least were the ad hoc ones. They were like, big waste of my time. No agenda, no focus, just meet to meet. And we've all been in those types.
There's some people that process by talking it out. And so they want to force everybody else to be in the room with them as they figure it out by talking out loud. And you're like, I don't know what's happening right now, but you just said four different things that don't match up. And it's because they're still figuring it out. They're just doing it by talking out loud.
We would suggest some asynchronous time for that and then bring those words to us and we'll figure it out together. I think that's one of the things that as we've looked at all of this, like it's meetings just to meet, waste of time, face to face, remote, hybrid, anything. For this one, what are you doing with your meetings? What are you doing with your technologies? And what is your culture around the collaboration? And be very intentional with all of that.
Yeah, this closes out our conversation on hybrid remote work. What do you think about what we shared? Are there any other things that maybe we didn't bring up or didn't explore enough for you that you're still curious about, you want to know more about? Let us know. Our next conversation, which will be conversation number 7, we're going to go into exploring more challenges of remote work in general. We've probably touched on most of them so far, but we'll go a little bit deeper into challenges and how to overcome them. So, till next time.